We're learning more about Trump's effort to corrupt the Department of Justice into overturning the 2020 election and how that nearly led to a Sunday version of the Nixon-era Saturday Night Massacre. An explosive new report in the Washington Post details former DOJ official Jeffrey Clark's plan to take over the Justice Department and deliver the election to Trump. In a meeting 3 days before the insurrection, Clark discussed his plan to send a draft letter to key states, including Georgia, urging the appointment of separate slates of electors. Trump's acting attorney general, Jeffrey Rosen, and his deputy, Richard Donoghue, also in the meeting, had already rejected that plan. According to the Post, as Rosen and Donoghue listened, Clark told Trump that he would send the letter if Trump named him attorney general. History is calling, Clark said, according to a deposition from Donoghue. This is our opportunity. We can get this done. Donoghue urged Trump not to put Clark in charge, calling him not competent and warning of mass resignations by Justice Department officials. Trump ultimately backed down on replacing Rosen with Clark, whose actions are under scrutiny by the House January 6th committee. A hearing on all of this, originally scheduled for tomorrow, has been postponed to next week. With me now, former Senator Doug Jones of Alabama. He's a distinguished senior fellow for the Center for American Progress. And Paul Butler, Georgetown Law School professor and a former federal prosecutor. Thank you all both for being here. Let me start with you, Paul, because this was pretty straightforward. And it actually kind of reminds me of what Trump was impeached for the first time, where he said to the president of Ukraine, the now very much, embattled by Russia, president of Ukraine, I just need you to announce an investigation. Just get out there and say that there's an investigation, say that there's fraud, and then to create the pretext, right? He wanted the Justice Department to announce, that with their power, they wanted a separate slate of electors because there was something wrong with the votes in Georgia. That's a crime, right?
It's just one of the crimes that's detailed in the Post article, Joy. There was this bombshell, a couple of bombshells like that one that go right to the criminal culpability of Donald Trump. When Trump refused to make Jeffrey Clark attorney general, Clark then asked if the Justice Department could write a formal opinion about the role of Vice President Pence in certifying the election. And then Trump tells everybody at the meeting, the attorney general, the deputy attorney general, the White House counsel, not to say a word to Mike Pence. In other words, Trump issues this stay-away order to the people he knew would tell Pence that he had the constitutional obligation to certify the Electoral College votes. Joy, Trump did not want Mike Pence to be instructed on the law. That's strong evidence of Trump's own consciousness of guilt, that he likely knew that what he was trying to do was illegal and corrupt.
And, I do wonder sometimes, Senator Jones, how many of your former colleagues were aware and how aware people were of this plan, because it does seem like part of this coup attempt was an effort to, number one, box Mike Pence in, and create this alternate slate of electors and push him to use those instead of the real electors. But then also on the violent side, intimidate both Mike Pence and the United States Senate into going along with it. Hard to get around the idea that this wasn't a pretty multifaceted conspiracy, right?
Well, it is certainly multifaceted and it is broad. There are so many things happening before, during, and after, Joy. I mean, that's, I think, a real stunning part of what's going on right now, as you see so much of the planning and so much that was said that is still ongoing today. You can look at it in primaries that are taking place tonight as we speak. The same things are being said. One of the things that I found most interesting, though, was the fact that I don't believe that Jeffrey Clark was doing this on his own. This was an environmental lawyer. He was, head of that division, the head of civil part of that division. He had no experience in any of this. All the emails and all suggest that there were things being sent to him, letters being prepared. There's more behind this than we've seen so far. Now, whether or not the committee can get to that, because Jeffrey Clark took the fifth when he was called, which, by the way, was a fairly smart thing to do rather than being held in contempt, was to take the fifth. But the fact is, I just believe there's more to this that was coming into the Justice Department. And thank goodness there were people. You can say what you want about a number of the Trump appointees, but at the end of the day, there were a lot of folks who stood up for that department and stood up for the Constitution at the end of the day, because we came real close.
Yeah, absolutely, and threatened to resign en masse. Let's go through, because, you know, we know now, per Merrick Garland, that he's been watching these hearings, which, in a way, it's like you shouldn't have to watch. Like, you got your own investigative authority, like you don't have to watch it. But okay, but there are so many crimes that he could be watching and sort of picking up the straws on. You know, Paul, let me let you listen to Senator Claire McCaskill, because she put up one of the options of what Trump, you know, of all the many crimes committed, this is one that could lead to some consequences, maybe.
The other bucket that he really may have trouble with, the Trump organization might, and Donald Trump himself, is consumer protection laws. Those typically are handled by states' attorneys general, and not by the federal government, although the federal government could stick their foot in if they could find some wire fraud and it was big and blatant enough, and this may turn out to be that.
So campaign finance violations, wire fraud has been mentioned, just as, the Bannons, the stuff that Bannon actually got. Steve Bannon got in trouble for lying and telling people, give me this money and we're going to build a wall, and then it turns out that was a fraud. Of course, he was pardoned. His partners in that crime are the ones who are going to face the consequences. 3 men were charged with them. They've already pleaded guilty, 2 of them, to conspiring to defraud and swindle donors. Letitia James has already put her hand up and said, oh, I'm paying attention to this as well. Could it be that it's going to wind up being states' attorney generals, Paul, who wind up paying attention to the financial crimes and fraud here?
I sure hope not, especially after a federal judge in California found that there's evidence of a criminal conspiracy between Donald Trump and John Eastman to overturn the election, to subvert American democracy. The January 6th panel hearings are showing direct connections between the president's words and the bloody, violent attack on the Capitol. So Eastman was told by someone in the White House counsel's office that he clearly needs a good criminal defense lawyer. It's up to Merrick Garland to decide whether Donald Trump also needs one. But, Joy, sometimes it's important to name the crime. And the crime that there's evidence that the president of the United States, the former president, committed is sedition, that he conspired to overturn our democracy. And that's what he should be held accountable for.
And the thing is, Senator Jones, the tragedy here is that the Republican Party has already benefited from this crime, because they've used it, whether they actually believe the Stop the Steal nonsense or not, to pass extremely restrictive voting laws that are going to make it very difficult for Democrats to win future elections. In states like yours, they're using the big lie whether or not they believe it. You have individuals who've profited from it. Mark Meadows got money. Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend skimmed money. They're using it both to financially profit and to politically profit. So in a sense, Donald Trump's, crime has already benefited his political party, right?
Well, it benefited in a number of ways, but I want to make sure we are clear about something, Joy. What we're hearing from the January 6th committee right now is really stunning. But at the same time, almost all of the evidence that we're hearing right now cannot be used in a court of law. It is not going to be admissible that way. And I've been trying to make sure folks understand that this January 6th committee is an investigative body, and their job right now is to put the information out there. Let the truth become. You can hold people accountable when the truth is made public through so many ways. And that's important as we move into the elections. There are so many election deniers that are on the ballot.
Yeah.
There are so many laws that have been passed. It is important right now to get that truth out so that people will understand that as they're going to the polls. And then we'll let the criminal justice system, figure this out. And I think it will. Whether it's state or federal, I think the criminal justice system will figure it out. But the most important thing is get people to understand what's at stake here and what this committee is showing them.
Yeah, an excellent point. Thank you very much for making it. Former Senator Doug Jones and, of course, Paul Butler. Thank you both.